Well, welcome back to the podcast, everybody. My name is Sister Liz. You're listening to In the Company of Charity podcast, and I'm here, as always, with Sister Elizabeth Grime, my favorite co-host in crime. How are you, sister?
I'm doing very well, sister. I still have a little bit of a cold, so I hope everyone just feels bad for me because you know it's not fun to have to be talking and being all professional talking and sound like a frog, but it's okay. It's okay.
It's good sympathy prayers. It's
That's right. That's right. And you just keep going. Just keep going. Keep going. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I'm doing well.
you're hanging in there. Please take the time to rest up and get well for all the work ahead. I'm on my way to Texas A&M this week. Be helping
Oh,
out with
very
the
exciting.
busy persons retreat for 81 students are going to be a part of
Oh my
this thing.
gosh. Wow.
So
Well, God bless them for making this retreat, for doing this. And
yeah,
we,
and
we
they're
just appreciate your efforts, so much for the cause, you know.
yeah, it's going to be fun. And there's I think 10 or 12 religious and priests that are going to be meeting with students during the week. So
Nice, nice. Yeah, I did one busy person's retreat in Niagara Falls with the CMs, with their
oh, of
campus
course.
ministry. It was really a lot of fun. It was really a lot of fun and very, very profound, very deep. You know, there's a lot of real intention of trying to be faithful to it. So, um, yeah, blessings on your week.
Yes, it's them giving a fragment of their time every day to growing in faith and talk about the Lord and God's working in their hearts. So this is going to be really cool, and I think you guys are going to love this interview today. Deacon David, who you interviewed, about all the things that he is up to as a permanent deacon for the Archdiocese of St. Louis, sort of follow up to our previous episode. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I'll tell you, you'll hear it in the. This isn't giving much away, but I originally contacted Deacon David Billing from the Archdiocese of St. Louis to companion the conversation with Heidi from the Missourians to abolish the death penalty, and I, I called him because his name was listed as one of the contacts for conversations about the death penalty work that's being done in the diocese. And so when I got him on the phone, I realized he does a lot of different things. And
Mm.
as I talked more about with him, I realized this is a very humble servant of God. He's a he's a gentle um, man who does whatever God puts in front of him. And I think you'll just be fascinated for me to have made a phone call to talk to someone about the death penalty and work in jails and prisons that's being done in the diocese, and to get a wealth of other things. It always amazes me how we do so much and people do so much that the Lord puts in front of them, um, and they're just kind of walking around. You see them in your Walmart sometimes. Like you don't really even know that these living saints are kind of wandering among us and doing amazing things. So I think you'll really enjoy his simplicity and also just his dedication to his vocation. Just beautiful, really beautiful, real simple guy. Loved him, and I definitely would like to have him back on again.
And if I may, I think that it would be a great opportunity for us to pray for. And if you have any permanent deacons in your life, to thank them for what they're doing, because it is such a unique call. Many of them are married and they have had professions and whole other lives. And yeah, Deacon David is just giving us an example of someone who said, hey, I was just open and available, and these things presented themselves to me, and I said yes, and a whole other world of things opened up to him. And so I think it's just such um, a beautiful witness to the gift of the permanent diaconate in the church. We're grateful to have you guys listen to this episode, and Certainly, if you wouldn't mind giving us a rating on Apple Podcasts, a review, and share this with a friend. Maybe you have a permanent deacon in your life that you can share this episode with as well. And keep in touch with us, would you? Because we have an email address waiting for your prayer intentions and suggestions at companyofcharity@gmail.com. Enjoy the episode, guys.
Hi, everyone. This is Sister Elizabeth, and you are listening to In the Company of Charity, the podcast of the Daughters of Charity. And I am here today with Deacon David Billing of the Archdiocese of St. Louis. He works in the Office of Peace and Justice with the Archdiocese. And I have to say, I reached out to Deacon David in regard to some conversations that we'd like to have this week and next week about the death penalty. And I found out a lot more about Deacon David. He's a very interesting guy, and I'm really excited for him to be with us today. So, Deacon, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. You were born and raised in St. Louis?
Actually, St. Charles, St. Louis area, of course.
Okay.
And I was raised in Catholic school and went to Catholic high school, St. Philippine Duchesne. My wife and I were very active in the local parish, and I wanted to continue to do more, and I was invited by one of the pastors to consider the diaconate. But the cool thing about diaconate, it's when we're older and our kids are mostly raised, and it's kind of a backup plan for retirement to keep us busy. It's been a blessing. I've really enjoyed being a deacon.
Yeah. It's really interesting. We've spoken to a number of deacons over the last 8 seasons, and I'm always fascinated by how the church invites men to the diaconate and how it kind of changes their lives in some ways. It gives you a freedom to be able to minister in the church in a different way. So what has it been like for you as a deacon? What kinds of things have you done? You've told me about a few things, certainly mission trips that you've done in Guatemala. Tell us a little bit about that work.
I can't remember what year we started, but I've been doing mission trips for many years. I started with the Methodist Church. I was invited by a nurse to join them after I was supplying medications from the hospital for the trip. And she got special permission from the bishop that a Catholic could go on their trip. And it was a great time. I went 3 times to central Mexico, to the Copper Mountains, and worked among Tarahumara Indians. And it planted a seed, and I've been doing them every year since then. About, 5 years in, we started, I came to the conclusion that my wife and I could do mission trips ourselves. We could do our own recruiting and organizing and leading them ourselves. And we started doing that, started in Ecuador, which was it's a difficult mission trip because they fly us into the jungle, Amazon jungle, and we live in a village and eat what they eat and sleep in hammocks and with mosquito netting on them. It was a rich experience, but it's not for the faint of heart. So my uncle was a Jesuit. He's passed now, but he spent 50 years in Belize, Central America. And so I thought, well, maybe we could have some trips to Belize for beginners and some trips to Ecuador for more advanced. But we fell in love with Belize, and we were doing medical, and then we started building churches and projects in schools, and still doing medical. And we've had so many good experiences in Belize. Well, their health system improved so that the rural Belizeans didn't need us as much as before. And then my first cousin, Father Dan Vogt, who also went to grade school with me, he's the same age as I am. He has been a priest in Guatemala for 38 years. He said, well, why don't you come bring your team down to Guatemala. And so we did, and we've been doing that ever since, maybe 15 or 17 years, something like that. And it's an annual trip, and it's been really good too. I wish that I could speak Spanish better than I do. I do Duolingo. I have a streak of like 1,400 days in a row, but it doesn't translate to fluency, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah, I have to get you connected with our sister Judy, who lives with us here in St. Louis, and she's a Duolingo. Yeah, she does a lot of Duolingo, and she worked in El Paso.
Oh, okay.
And so she's been doing it, obviously, but here it might be a little bit different. It's not she's not involved in ministry right now. So, but as you've been talking, I'm thinking, so you start in Ecuador, you move to Belize, then now you're in Guatemala. And as I said in the beginning, I wanted to talk about prison ministry, which we will get to for sure. But this is what I always find fascinating, is that when we meet with somebody, for one reason, we realize they have lots of experience in mission and in service to those who are vulnerable, those who are poor. So now you're working or bringing mission trips, doing mission trips in Guatemala. And what kind of needs are there in Guatemala?
We go to a very rural part of Guatemala. It's an eastern part. It's in the. We are working in a town called El Astor, which is on Lake Izabal, which is about an hour from the coast. And there's not access to healthcare is very limited there, and the people are poor. It's the Quechua Mayan community, and we work in conjunction with an organization called Quechua Partners. And Quechua Partners has some great projects that maybe I won't talk about all of them, but one of them is that they train Mayan women to be health promoters and midwives in their local villages. So we work with them to provide basic medical care. We diagnose infections, upper respiratory tract, urinary tract infections. We treat for parasites, everyone who comes to us, and we even send some home for the family, because if you ask someone if they would like to be treated for worms, they definitely say yes, because it's endemic there. Sadly, we diagnose hypertension and diabetes. People are walking around with 300, 400 or higher blood sugars. And sometimes they knew they had diabetes, many times they didn't know. And it seems like anecdotally, we've seen an increase in diabetes in these rural villages. And it could be access to sweets, processed foods, and soda. Soda is a big advertiser there, and soda is available everywhere. They drink it warm, cold, whatever. We've even seen it in baby bottles before. It's cleaner and safer than water in some ways, because it's not, their water is typical village. They drink water right out of the river. So it's full of germs. So it's cleaner than that, but it's not good to have sugary fluids, drinks all the time. And diet soda is not a thing there. You can't get diet soda.
That's really interesting that you said. I think I wouldn't think, oh, well, soda would be the option even for babies, because the water is polluted and dangerous. And then soda is promoted instead of some other healthier drink.
Yeah, you can buy water there, but soda's more fun.
Yeah, exactly.
And once you develop a taste for it, it feels refreshing. So.
Wow. And so tell us a little bit. I know from you talked about your background a little bit, that you grew up around here, but you studied pharmacology. Is that right?
I'm a hospital pharmacist.
Okay.
Yes.
So you do have so you kind of came into this with an interest around medical interest, of course, but also to see how people could be treated and sustain treatment, I would imagine.
Well, the sustaining treatment's this hard part.
Yeah.
And that's a project my wife and I are starting up now. We diagnose people with diabetes. We give them a 30-day supply of medications, and we tell them to save the container and take it to your pharmacy and get some more. And because it's important that you cannot cure diabetes, but you can control it, and you can control the effects of diabetes. But we stress it's really important to keep taking it, but we know they don't. It costs about $1 a day to buy the medication for diabetes, and that's beyond the budget of most rural families. They're mostly subsistence farmers, and most of them don't have jobs outside of doing their farming. So cash is not something they have a lot of. They mostly grow the food they eat. And so this project that my wife and I want to do is to start a diabetes clinic in conjunction with the Mayan women who are in the villages, the midwives. And we would ask them to do a weekly blood sugar test and dispense the medication that we provide for them. We buy it in advance and leave it with them. And then we plan on going down once a quarter to check the blood sugars, to do an A1C, which measures how your blood sugars have been running for the last month or so. And then maybe do some adjustments and resupply them with finger stick blood sugar monitoring, the strips, and medication. Hopefully get some people signed up this next trip in January and try it out. We'll be doing fundraising for that in the coming year as well.
Okay, so how would somebody who's listening now, how would they help you with this? Like, how could they donate, or?
They could come to our website. Mm-hmm. It's called qpworks.org.
Okay.
The Q stands for Kekchi and P stands for Partners, works.org. And there's a projects tab, and you scroll down. I think you click on clean water, scroll down, and you'll see our medical missions. And there's a donate button close to the medical missions. It's important that they hit that donate button because that directs it to our project.
If in any way we can help our listeners, people who are concerned about things that are happening in the world, and this is certainly one. I would love to be able to have you come back on and maybe bring your wife. Mm-hmm. Her name is Chris, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So bring Chris with you, and we could do another podcast
when we get back.
When you get back would be great. Okay. Yeah, definitely. That's what I mean when I say when you reach out to someone to talk about issues around peace and justice, you find that most folks are not single topic. They're looking at something much bigger than that. And I'm really happy we were able to talk about this. Is there anything else about the mission, the works that you're doing? Like, who's your team? Where do they come from, these folks?
It's about half of them. We have 29 people. It's our largest group yet. About half of them are medical professionals and half are helpers. And half of the whole team has gone with us before, and half are new people, and they hear about it from other people. We don't do any advertising. It's just word of mouth. We opened up the sign up in late July, and we were sold out within 10 days.
Wow, that's so encouraging. That's wonderful.
In January.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. And you usually are able to find. Do you have the same team go each time, or is it you build the team?
About half the team is new, and half the team they've gone with us before.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Wow, that's great. That's great. So we'll get back to that for sure. We'll definitely have you and your wife, Chris, come on again. But as I said in the beginning, I wanted to talk with you about the prison work that you do in the diocese. So I think, especially when we talk with deacons, we realize they're involved in lots of work in the church. And a lot of that work is social justice work. And that's, of course, as a daughter of charity, that's, right straight to our hearts, working with the poor, the vulnerable, those who are in need. And so when I reached out just by Googling prison ministry and the death penalty in the Archdiocese of St. Louis, your name came up. I think when I first reached you, you were a little surprised. You said, "Why me?" So now you're on the website. So tell us a little bit about. So this is another work that you've just recently come into. Is that right?
Yes, 2 years ago, All Things New was finishing up, and the diaconate office said that we may not need quite as many deacons as we've had in the past. And is there anybody who's interested in doing something different? Mm-hmm. And they gave a list of topics that you're interested in. And I, of course, clicked many of the social justice topics. And they suggested that I might consider a full-time assignment with the Office of Peace and Justice. And so it's kind of an experiment, but it's been a good experience for me. So I'm with the Office of Peace and Justice, and so there's topics that I really care about. And some of the ones we've touched on already: prison ministry, the death penalty, and immigration are three of my passions. And so it was a great opportunity to do something different every day. Every week is different.
Yeah, it's interesting. The All Things New campaign or movement in the Archdiocese of St. Louis involved the closing or merging, twinning of parishes, as many dioceses have gone through. So, in different ways, it's been a blessing in some ways and difficult, of course, in others. It's these projects and processes are never easy, but it opened up for you an opportunity to do something different. So tell us about the prison ministry. What does it involve for you?
Well, as I said, I've been in this for 2 years, so I feel inadequate to be the spokesman for prison ministry. But I can tell you my experience.
Speak for yourself. Well, so, what is it that Deacon David is doing?
Yeah. So my local county, St. Charles County, I approached them to see if I could come and do communion services once a month or more often there at the jail. And they originally, I got a no because we're closed now for COVID, and so I persisted, and finally they agreed that I could come as an experiment, but I couldn't use the classroom because it was already booked, so it wouldn't be a one communion service and done. I said, well, could I go to each pod and do it with whoever wants to participate? And they said, yeah, we can try that. So what happens is I go there with 8.5 by 10 or whatever, a sheet of paper with the readings for the Sunday and a short homily, a few prayers and some questions for them to reflect on, and some Bible readings that they can meditate on related to the topic for the coming week. And I give one to everyone, and I print some in Spanish as well. So we go accompanied by a correctional officer. We go to each pod, and they call out who wants to come out for Catholic communion service. And so they line up against the wall. I'm this far, just right across 5 feet away from him. And I do the reading for the day, the short homily, and review the questions a little bit, and then I invite them to either explain that I brought Jesus with me, and if you would like to receive communion or a blessing, and I tell them either way, no judgment. And so I go down the line. If you want a blessing, you cross your arms. If you want the communion, put your hands as like a throne in front of you. And then we say the Our Father before that, and then I always tell them, as I'm closing, to remember that you're children of God, that you're loved so very much. He loves you more than a mother could love her child. And he loves you. There's nothing you did to deserve that love, and there's nothing you can do to escape that love. And I said, go back and just relish in the wonderful feeling of being so loved by God as you are right now. And then I give them a blessing, of course. And then we go to the next pod and say, anybody want Catholic communion? Sometimes I will do the communion service 8 times in a day. And I think I'm sometimes ministering to the correctional officers as well, because they pay attention and they seem like they really enjoy hearing it. I feel bad for them that they have to hear it so many times, but they don't complain. And some of them say, yeah, I signed up for to accompany you this week because I wanted to hear your what you have to say again. So
Wow. Well,
very cool.
so if they're getting the same message that these men are
And women.
and women,
Yeah.
wow, and women are
Mhm.
precious in the eyes of God, maybe they'll become precious in the eyes of the guards as well. And treatment can even be.
The homilies I do are pretty simple. I keep
Mhm.
pretty basic, and I try to have questions, reflection questions that can apply to them right now, not after they get out. And you have to remember that they're in a jail, and it's a time of uncertainty for them. They don't know when their case is going to come up. They don't know if they're going to be going home to prison, and some are serving their sentence, and it's a short-term sentence of 2 years or less. But it's still a time of uncertainty. It's whereas once you get to prison, like you're in for the long haul, and you just kind of settle in, and this is home. There's the uncertainty is I'm sure weighs heavily on people.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. And you just started this on your own, so you didn't have a model before you got
Not
there.
exactly a model. Before COVID, there were some deacons in St. Charles County that rotated through the jail, and they would do a different, each one, I think each one had like a different week of the month, and they would go and hand out communion. But they didn't attempt to do gospel reading or the homily. So it's a kind of experiment. And they're doing construction at the jail right now, and they've been doing it for about, I don't know, maybe a year and a half. So the classroom is shut down. So I think I'm the only clergy person going into the jail now. Beside for groups, certainly, many denominations have people that they're meeting one-on-one with. But I think I'm the only one that meets with groups at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I've asked if I could use a classroom once it's opened up again, and they indicated it probably could.
Well, you might think it's different though. Like this, it sounds like what you're doing is so personal to the
Yeah,
space they're in.
It might be more intimate the way I do it.
Yeah,
There.
yeah. You'll have to think about that. Yeah. So you go into the jail. Are there other programs like this in other counties? You're in St. Charles County, right? Is it?
Yes, St. Charles County.
And so, do you know, is anyone doing this in any other counties
Oh,
of
yeah.
the diocese,
Yes.
archdiocese?
And so one of my responsibilities at the Office of Peace and Justice is to help ensure that there's a Catholic presence in every jail and prison in the archdiocese. It's a priority for the Archbishop that there is availability for sacraments and Catholic connection in each location.
Mm-hmm.
So we have deacons and priests who have been going for many years. That's why I feel inadequate to be the representative for the Archdiocese for prison ministry. But I tell you what I know, and I really enjoy it. I look forward to it. And I get to recognize people, and they recognize me, and they know my name, and I always close also with, when you get out, come and see us at St. Cletus Church. I let the pastor know, or asked the pastor if it'd be okay, and he said, of course, yeah. So I haven't really recognized anybody yet, but I'm hoping that they will come by.
I think that's great. I know that you've said now a couple of times that you don't feel like you're the spokesperson, but I think the way you speak about it, I wish our listeners could see your face. You just kind of light up as you talk about it, because it sounds like it's something that's become dear to your heart. Maybe you weren't anticipating it initially when you first took the assignment, but it's as exciting to you as your work in Guatemala, it seems like.
Yeah. Well, and I take direction from Jesus. He said, I was in prison and you visited me.
Yeah.
So I meet Jesus there all the time.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's great. So tell me a little bit about the work around the death penalty. So tell us about what that's like. Now, that wasn't something you were working in before. So how have you kind of educated yourself about that, or what do you do in the diocese, in the archdiocese?
Well, I assist others with the work of trying to abolish the death penalty. We recently have a new volunteer that with a lot of experience who began in, I think, July. Her name is Mary Fox, and she worked for this at the state level, trying to get cases mitigated so that instead of the death penalty, they would get life in prison without parole. And so she's kind of taken on that project full time to abolish the death penalty. So we do education in parishes and in schools. I developed a slideshow that explains the history of the death penalty in the church and how the church's message has been consistent for the past several popes. And now it's just being more explicit that there's no room for the death penalty in Catholic teaching. And I remind people that that we are children of God. We have dignity, and we should respect all human people, and that the life is sacred. And then I talk about myths. There's myths. There's lots of myths around the death penalty.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to hear them all now, but
yeah, give us a few.
Okay, that it's cheaper to kill people than to keep them in prison for life, and that's not true. The cost of a death penalty case is just enormous. Like I read $500,000 to convict someone of the death penalty, and then there's appeals, and another myth is that it brings peace to the family of the victim, and that's not true as well, because each time there's an appeal, they're invited to come in and testify for or against the reducing the sentence, and they have to relive that pain over and over. There's another myth that it's a deterrent for murder, and that is disproven as well. States with who have the highest number of people that they execute have the highest murder rates, and the states where it's been abolished, the murder rates are lower. So there's no causation, no good result from having the death penalty.
Wow, I'd like to see your
slideshow.
Your slideshow someday. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd love that. It's really interesting as you say that. Do you know offhand how many men and/or women? Is there one woman on death row in Missouri?
No, I don't think so.
No. Do you know how many are currently in Missouri or across the country?
Around 8.
8. Okay. Yeah.
And some of those 8 are not eligible for the death penalty because of, they're on death row. They've been given a sentence, but they're not eligible to be executed because of health or mental issues, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've seen in some states, though, that doesn't seem to be deterrent.
Mm-hmm. It's really disturbing that the number of executions has risen so high this year. It's really disturbing.
Yeah, I just read an article about Florida. It was a journalist who has been attending every execution since like the 1990s or something. But he was writing how much they've accelerated in the last since COVID, and he attends every one because he feels it's important to, as a journalist especially, and he's also Catholic, to witness what the state is doing in our name, and to be a witness and a voice for what's happening. So it's really, I think it is one of those situations that it really divides people. It seems like any life issue that the church holds dear, it can be so divisive among people because of anger and retribution, and people are hurt. They're really hurt by what happens. Their families are. I think the work of Sister Helen Prejean certainly has permeated and kept this conversation and topic open as well. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing in that area, and just educating people is really important.
Another thing the Archdiocese is doing is trying to get legislation passed that would abolish it in Missouri anyway. So and we do that by lobbying our legislators and supporting or not supporting different bills that come up. We also go to each execution. We can't go in, but we take a bus load or sometimes 2 buses of witnesses to stand outside of the prison in Bonne Terre where they're executed, and we pray and sing and just be mostly silent witnesses against this execution.
And how would somebody get involved in this ministry with you? Either the prison, the work that you're doing with the prison, imagine that might be more difficult, that you couldn't have a lot of people coming with you, but
Right.
How would somebody get involved in either of these? Are there ways in which people could write to prisoners that might...
There is some pen pal type programs. There's a ministry called Criminal Justice Ministry that is in St. Louis. That would be probably a starting point. And they help with after people have served their sentences to help to reintroduce themselves into society. And there's another one in St. Charles County, Second Chance Ministry, and it's at Incarnate Word Darden. So they could contact one of those two if they want to get involved.
So you have your Guatemalan trips, and you have this work in prison, and your study and presentations around the death penalty. As a deacon, your ordination and your mission is really to serve the church in so many ways, you know. So how do you see for yourself that this is, how has it been fulfilling for you, I guess is one of the questions. And if you were listening yourself to this podcast, what would you want to say to somebody who's questioning, how do I get involved in social justice issues? Or how do I even think about being like a deacon or an ordained clergy or involved more in my church? How do you recommend people get involved in things that feel so huge sometimes?
I take direction from Matthew 25, the second half of the chapter, and where Jesus is judging all mankind and separating the goats and the sheep. And he says, I was hungry and you fed me, and thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. In prison, are sick and you cared for me. And I think that that can be the direction for others as well. They can seek out parishes that have social justice committees and start attending. You don't necessarily have to be a member of the parish to attend. I wasn't a member of the St. Cletus social justice parish when I started going to their meeting. It was one of the reasons that helps us decide to choose to go to church there. But listen, there's lots of things you can do, and there's a variety of topics. There's so many ways to help. The need is so great that it's easy to find a niche. I could do that, or I could try that. Just give it a try. It's very rewarding, and it's sometimes scary at the same time. But that it's kind of like riding a roller coaster. It's kind of scary, but it's fun and rewarding.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about roller coasters, but I do get the emotion of it, the exhilaration of being part of something that maybe you're not sure about, and just to try it. You know, this will be coming out towards the new year, maybe right after New Year's, but a good time for people to think about, what am I going to do this year that I didn't do last year that will bring me closer to my faith, closer to my desire to do good in the world. We often talk about the Vincentian question, when St. Vincent de Paul was first finding his way and listening to the Spirit. The very wealthy woman he was working for as a priest asked him, after an experience of meeting someone who was so poor they couldn't get themselves to church and was then not going to have confession before they died. And Vincent was able to go out, and she realized the suffering that the people were experiencing. And she said, what must be done? And so that's always been for us, for Vincentians, the question, what must be done? It's not necessarily what more, because there's lots of things happening, right? But what must be done for me? What's mine to do? And so I would just really invite our listeners today to, to hear the deacon's story of starting just by being asked, invited to think about the diaconate, connects him to his work in Ecuador and then Guatemala and Belize, and now taking this position with the Archdiocese. It's a real journey in social justice, teaching and openness. So I know in the beginning you said, and you've said a couple of times, I don't really want to be the spokesperson. But I think you have spoken to us in a very eloquent way about what it means to be of service, not just to the church, but to Christ in his suffering. So I really appreciate that.
I also would like to add one thing.
Sure.
Sometimes we're dealing with people that we might not always be in the same circle with. Some myths about them, and we kind of maybe think of them as the other. And I think when you put a name and a face and a story to the other, they stop being the other and they become a person that you can relate to and find out that you have more in common with them than you thought. And it's easier to have compassion towards someone who you know a little bit about. And I'd encourage people to step out of your comfort zone a little bit and meet someone that they wouldn't normally come in contact with. It could be an immigrant or someone who's been in prison, or just someone who worships different than you, or looks different than you, or speaks different than you. So, Heavenly Father, we ask you to touch our hearts and remind us that we meet Jesus in each other every day. And if we have our eyes open and ears open and our hearts open, we can experience Jesus in a special way each and every day. We thank you for the blessing in this time and the seasons of the church, and we thank you, Lord, for the opportunities that you put forward to meet you in each other. We ask this in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Deacon David, and we will definitely have you on the podcast again.
Well, thank you.